parti? Good evening, everyone. We invite the last people to sit down. So good evening, dear students, dear alumni, dear business leaders, entrepreneurs, members of the civil society, dear professors and collaborators, welcome to HEC Paris. We are very happy to have you here to participate in the, I hope, the interesting debates, exchange of ideas, and on this extremely hot topic of climate change. I'm honored to introduce HEC Paris, Associate Dean of HEC Paris, and Karine Sanouillet, Managing Director of the HEC Alumni Association, for the opening of this inspiring evening session.
Dear all, we're absolutely delighted to see so many of you tonight. So this evening is part of a process launched by the COP21 in Paris, but many events will punctuate the coming months at HEC.
This event is the first on many accounts. It's the first high-profile event on a specific theme to be organized for the benefit of the whole HEC community, that is to say for both alumni and students. It is also the first statement by the alumni community on the important subject of climate change. Why is it important to engage our alumni and students community on this subject? Well, given their professional positions or future professional positions, they are clearly in a position to move forward on actions to limit climate change, whatever the sector of activity. Also, the HEC community has always been concerned with the future and preparing for the future. It's part of our DNA. So the presence of 1,000 of you tonight, students, graduates, professors, decision makers, or future decision makers this evening is very encouraging.
So the Center for Society and Organization is the initiator of this evening and played a major role in its implementation. This center is at the very heart of the future of HEC, because we strongly believe that to be among the world academic institution in the future, HEC has to be a carrier of meaning. So therefore, I would like to thank all the members of the center, professors and staff, all the students, primarily those of the MSc in Sustainability and Social Innovation, and all the students involved in the HEC Net Impact Club, all the alumni, and also all the donors, alumni and corporation of the S&O Center, Danone, Schneider, Renault, Engie, and also of the Energy and Finance Chair, Deloitte and Société Générale. In a word, those who make things happen in this center and makes this center very promising for the future of HEC. So we are very privileged tonight to host prominent and highly mobilized personalities on social impact and climate issues. This will be done as part of a lesson in a minute, and we will proceed on the round table, and the General Director of HEC will close the session. We will immediately make room for our first guest, Mr. Jeremy Rifkin. Well, I doubt we need to present Jeremy Rifkin, American essayist, scientific and economic perspective specialist. He has published numerous bestsellers: The End of Work, The Age of Access, The Empathic Civilization, and you have necessarily heard and read, I hope, The Third Industrial Revolution, and more recently, The Zero Marginal Cost Society. For all our students in their econ class these days, zero marginal costs should ring the bell somehow. Mr. Rifkin also puts in practice all his work in the Nord-Pas-de-Calais, in France, or in China, where he stays often these days. His work, and all my apologies to make it so short, focuses on exploring new scientific and technological potential and their impact on society and environment. So, Mr. Rifkin, we are very, let me say, excited of having you with us tonight. So please welcome, he should be Mr. Jeremy Rifkin.
You can feel free to do the same. I overdressed. Good evening, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be in Paris and to be at this great business school. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to start on a somber note, though. And I hope it'll end up being a liberating reflection. But first, I have a ground rule. Put all the cameras down, put all the iPads down, put all the smartphones down, and don't go into withdrawal symptoms. Put it all down. We're going to have a nice, quiet setting. And if you're professional camera people, we need to move to the back. I'm going to start on a somber note. I hope it'll end up being somewhat of a liberating reflection. You will judge. GDP is slowing in every country in the world, no exception. And the reason that's happening is productivity has been declining all over the world for 20 years. And productivity is the key to GDP. We have a younger generation, a digital generation, unemployed all over the world. And now, here we are in 2015 after two industrial revolutions in the 19th and 20th century, and the best we can say about the economic system we created is A, the 80 richest individuals in the world tonight, 80 people, their combined wealth now equals the total wealth of 1/2 of the human race. What do you think of that? Now this economic crisis is compounded by a more profound environmental crisis. After two industrial revolutions in which we dug up the carbon deposits of a previous period in history and exhumed them to create this civilization, we now find ourselves in real-time climate change. And I have to tell you, I've been working on this issue for 45 years, and I got it wrong. I thought we had more time. I did not anticipate the feedback loops and the acceleration of those loops. And what's so terrifying about climate change, if you're a parent or a grandparent here or a student, this is never explained. The change in the temperature of the planet is shifting the water cycles of the earth. That's what this is all about. It's absolutely terrifying. This is the watery planet. Our ecosystems have developed over millions of years based on the water cycles and the cloud cycles traversing the earth. We go to other planets. What's the first thing we want to know? Water. No water, not interested. We found out that it looks like there's going to be water on Mars 2 days ago. Everybody got excited. For every 1 degree that the temperature goes up on Earth from industrial-induced global warming emissions, the atmosphere is sucking up 7% more precipitation. The heat is forcing that precipitation into the clouds. We're getting more concentration of precipitation and more violent water events everywhere. More extreme winter snows, more dramatic spring flooding, more prolonged summer droughts, more Category 3, 4, and 5 hurricanes, tsunamis, and typhoons. This is happening everywhere. This is just 2015. Our ecosystems cannot catch up to this dramatic shift in the water cycle in a few decades. Our scientists now tell us we're in the 6th extinction event of life on Earth. And those 6 extinction events are the big stories. And they all happened, for the first 5 happened before human beings were ever here. And each time there was a mass extinction event, the chemistry of the planet shifted very, very quickly, and we had massive die-out. And on the average, 10 million years to get life back on this little oasis in the universe. We're now in the 6th extinction event. And for you millennial students here, our scientists are telling us that by the time you're my age or your children are in their 40s, the last part of this century, we could see the massive die-out of over half the life forms on Earth, and we're not sure if we're going to make it. As my wife says, we're not grasping the enormity of this moment. 99.5% of all the species of life that have ever inhabited this planet have come and gone. How's that for odds? We're the youngest species. We've been here 175,000 years, anatomically modern humans. It's the height of hubris to believe that we're going to be able to get through this crisis. To understand the crisis is one thing. To look open to a new door for opportunities is another. Let's see if we can open the door. And maybe we have an opportunity here, maybe, that can get us to where we need to go in time to hopefully alleviate the worst parts of climate change. To understand the crisis and opportunity, we need to know how the great economic paradigm shifts in history occur. If we know how they occur, we can get a roadmap here of what the business community and civil society and government need to do, and a compass to get us into the next journey in history. There have been at least 7 great economic paradigm shifts in our history, and they share a common denominator, which anthropologically is very interesting. At a certain moment of time, 3 defining technologies emerge and converge to create what we call in engineering a general purpose technology platform. That's a fancy way of saying a new infrastructure that fundamentally changes the way we manage, power, and move economic activity across the value chains of society. What are those 3 defining technologies that converge for new paradigm shifts? Number 1, new communication technologies to allow us to more efficiently manage the economic activity. Number 2, new sources of energy so that we can more efficiently power the economic activity. And number 3, new transportation and logistics to more efficiently move the economic activity. When communication technologies, new forms of energy, new modes of transportation come together, they fundamentally realign the way we manage, power, and move economic life. This is the anthropology of economic change, and it's not in a single economic textbook in the world. Let me give you an example. 19th century, you'll have to put your camera down, young lady, and sit. 19th century, first industrial revolution, Britain. Communication, energy, and transport, manage power, and move economic life. The Brits took us from manual printing to steam power printing, which was a huge leap forward in productivity, allowing us to manage communication more efficiently. Then in the second half of the 19th century, they laid off that telegraph system across the aisle. This communication technology revolution converged with a new power source, cheap coal in the hinterlands of England. And then they created a new technology to harvest it called a steam engine. Then they put the steam engine on rails and created locomotives for national transportation, national markets, dense urban life, first industrial revolution. Communication, energy, transport, manage, power, and move, economic life. 20th century, the United States, second industrial revolution, again, another convergence. Centralized electricity, and especially the telephone, later radio and television, those communication technologies converged with cheap Texas oil, powered by a German invention, the internal combustion engine. And then Henry Ford put everybody on the roads with cars, buses, and trucks. And we matured the interstate highway systems after the war, World War II. The whole world through the 20th century, and it peaked July 2008. If you remember that month, Brent crude oil hit a record of $147 a barrel on world markets. And when that happened in July 2008, purchasing power shut down everywhere in the world that month. That was the great economic earthquake. The collapse of the financial market 60 days later was the aftershock. Our policy people still think the aftershock was the earthquake. We are now in the long sunset of this economic era. It's not just the Great Recession. The reason is this: our whole civilization, 2 industrial revolutions, is based on taking carbon out of the planet and making this way of life. Our fertilizers and our pesticides are made out of carbon deposits, oil. Our construction material is made out of fossil fuels. Most of our pharmaceuticals are still fossil fuel based. Our synthetic fiber, our power, our transport, our heat and light. So when energy starts to go over 95 a barrel, all the other prices go up. And when you get to that zone of 120 a barrel, purchasing power shuts down. Now, it's true the oil price is low now. That's because the economy is now contracting again. We hit another spike of 115 a barrel about a year ago, and there's a second reason. Now, the fossil fuel industry are fighting each other in the last days of this era. So OPEC has imposed this new idea of taking the prices down to 50 a barrel because they're wiping out shale gas and tar sands. And now they're going bankrupt all over America. And as soon as that happens, I'm saying this time next year, prices go up. So let me share an anecdote with you. When Angela Merkel became Chancellor of Germany, she asked me to come to Berlin in the first couple of weeks of her new government to help her address the question, how do we grow the German economy on her watch? When I got to Berlin, the very first question I asked this new Chancellor, I said, Madam Chancellor, how are you going to grow the German economy or the EU economy or the global economy as long as your business activity is operating on a second industrial revolution platform of centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel nuclear power, internal combustion transport, and that platform has matured its productive potential 20 years ago. Let me stop here for a moment. Let's talk about productivity. Our economists are writing these long articles saying, we don't understand why productivity is waning. We've got all these new killer products out of Silicon Valley and high tech and IT and digital this and that. What is the nature of productivity? Shouldn't that be the centerpiece? Shouldn't that be the one thing economists understand, right? Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This is something economists don't want to talk about. Kind of embarrassing. What is the nature of productivity? When Robert Solow won the Nobel Prize for Economic Growth Theory in 1987, he let out the little secret. He said, we used to believe that there are two factors that define productivity: more capital for better machines and better performing workers. He said, we have a little problem though. When we track every single year of the Industrial Revolution, those two factors, they only account for about 14% of the productivity. So Robert Solow asked the big question, where's the other 86% of productivity come from? Don't know. It's called the Solow residual. Moses Abramowitz, former head of the American Economic Association, here's the way he said it, the direct quote. Quote, this is a measure of our ignorance. You bet. And the reason they don't know is because when classical economic theory was penned in the late 1700s, the vogue was Newton's physics. So everyone wanted to be scientific, and they borrowed his metaphors, including the early economic philosophers. For example, you know Newton's law, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Adam Smith said he borrowed that metaphor, and that's how he came up with the invisible hand of supply and demand. Your French philosopher, Baptiste Say, he came up with his supply theory. Supply stimulates demand, generates supply, stimulates demand, unless disrupted. That's the first law. Body in motion stays in motion. There's only one thing wrong with using Newton's physics as metaphor to pen all of classical and neoclassical economic theory. Economic theory and economic practice has absolutely nothing to do with Newton's physics. Nothing. Economics is governed by the same laws that govern the universe. And those laws are the first and second laws of thermodynamics, the energy laws. They govern every conversion and activity in the universe and in our little biosphere and in our economic life. But those laws weren't discovered till the late 19th century when chemists were looking at energy flows through machines. By that time, economics was penned. There are two basic laws that govern energy in the universe. The first law is the conservation law. All the energy in the universe today has been here since the Big Bang and will be here to the final whimper. We've never seen energy created or destroyed in the universe as far as we know. That's the conservation law. But the second law says, well, that's true, but energy is always changing form from the Big Bang out, but only in one direction, from hot to cold, from concentrated to dispersed through the universe, from available to unavailable. Unavailable is energy that's still there, but it can't do useful work. It's called entropy. We are now paying the entropy bill in this biosphere. It's called CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide from 200 years of converting those deposits for the industrial way of life. There are three types of systems: open, closed, and isolated in terms of thermodynamics. An open system exchanges matter and energy with the outside world. A closed system exchanges energy, but it doesn't exchange matter with the outside world. An isolated system doesn't exchange matter or energy with the outside world. The Earth in relation to the solar system, A, B, or C? B. We're closed. We exchange plenty of energy with the sun, no problem there, but we don't exchange matter with the outside world here. Except for some meteorites and some cosmic dust every once in a while, what we have here is fixed. The rare earths, if you open up your smartphone, that's made up of all sorts of granular material with all sorts of rare earths that are fixed here from the time we blew off the sun. So energy is everything bounded in this earth, not just the fossil fuels, the rare earths, the metallic ore, the materials. Here's what economics is, although not in a single textbook. I take that back. It is in two. Georgescu Rogan's Entropy Law, Herman Daly's Steady State, in my book, Entropy. But I don't think it's used much in the courses. We take low entropy available energy out of nature, a rare earth, a metallic ore, a fossil fuel, and at every step of conversion in our value chains, we have to embed energy into that product or service to move it to the next stage of its process, but we lose energy in the conversion. This is called the aggregate efficiency. That is the ratio of potential work to the actual useful work you get. So we're extracting things out of nature, and we're storing them and shipping them and moving them and processing them and producing things out of them and consuming and recycling them. At every step, energy embedded in, but energy lost in the conversion. Let me say that nature isn't that efficient. I know some of you have little kitty cats at home. We have two little cats we adore, but they are really very inefficient carnivores. The carnivores and the mammals are not efficient. When a carnivore mammal chases down and consumes a victim, only 10% of the energy of the victim gets embedded in the predator. The rest is heat loss in the transfer. What does this have to do with the next stage of the human journey? We started the second industrial revolution in 1903 at 3% aggregate efficiency, meaning every single conversion of the value chain, only 3% got embedded, the other was lost. By 1990, the United States got up to a peak of 13% aggregate efficiency. Nothing's changed since 1990. Japan got to 20% aggregate efficiency. Nothing's changed there since 1990. Every other industrial country that goes through this platform, they mature at around 13 to 20% aggregate efficiency. There's no way to go above that ceiling as long as you're plugging into a platform based on centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel nuclear power, and internal combustion road, rail, water, and air transport. And we now know that aggregate efficiency amounts to most of the other 85% of productivity. Down the road at INSEAD, Bob Ayers, who's emeritus, some of you know, Kempel, many other physicists who went into economics, they simply plugged in one more factor, aggregate efficiency. And every single part of the Industrial Revolution every year, boom. Every engineer in this room could have told that to the economists. Because you study thermodynamics, it's kind of a smile to all of you. And if you're an architect, and if you're a chemist, and if you're a biologist, you understand this. Not a single business school in the world, maybe HEC will be the first, not a single business school in the world requires a single course on the laws of thermodynamics that govern all economic activity in the universe. I teach in the oldest business school in the world. I've been there for 45 years, teaching the advanced management program for executives, the Wharton School. We don't require it. Then we want to know why economics seems to be failing us as a discipline. So what does this have to do with the chancellor? She's a physicist. So I said to her on that first meeting, you can have market reforms, labor reforms, fiscal reforms, killer new technologies, but if you're plugging into that old system, you're not going to go anywhere. And that day I outlined a new convergence of communication, energy, and transport to manage power and move economic life in Germany. And at the end of the day, the chancellor said, Mr. Rifkin, we will have this for Germany. I'll report back to you what's happened in the last 10 years since we first got together. The communication internet has matured to manage economic life and social life. 25 years since the World Wide Web, everyone has their smartphone sitting there itching in your pocket, full of rare earths trying to be recycled. That communication internet is now converging with a digitalized renewable energy internet and an automated, digitalized, GPS-guided, and very, very soon driverless transport and logistics internet to create 3 internets in one seamless kernel to manage, power, and move economic life: communication, energy, and transport. These 3 internets, they ride on top of a platform called the Internet of Things. We're embedding sensors in every device, every machine, every appliance, so that they can monitor real-time economic activity and send big data. Of course, nobody bothered to ask, including many of the companies in my group, well, where are they sending the big data to? Once you ask that, you get a big question mark. The whole purpose of that big data is to send it down the value chain to the communication, energy, and transport matrix so that everyone can manage power and move their economic value chain. So we have sensors in the factories monitoring the economic activity, sending the big data. We have sensors in the agricultural fields watching the soil content, the water content, looking at weather patterns. We have sensors in warehouses monitoring traffic flows, sensors in smart homes, looking at your efficiency, sensors in automobiles, warehouses, and they're all sending big data. By 2030, we're going to have ubiquitous interconnectivity. Every device, every human being in one neural network. We are externalizing the neural network of the human race. This is an external prothesis of our cognitive and neural system. It has huge potential because now we have 3 billion people connected. My trip last year, not the one this year, I'm working with Wang Yang, who's the vice premier. He shocked me. He said, well, Jeremy, guess what? We've got a smartphone now for $25 with more computing power than sent your boys to the moon. So if you're making $2 a day, it doesn't make any difference where you are. Everyone's going to be connected within 20, 15 years at the outside. So the upside of this is that we have the possibility now of connecting the whole human race in a external prothesis of the nervous system, the cognitive system of humanity, so we can engage each other directly and eliminate all the middlemen and the giant vertically integrated organizations that were the mediaries in the 19th and 20th century. We have the prospect of democratizing economic life. But the moment we say this, and it's exciting, we get a little scared. Did he just say everything's going to be connected to everyone, ubiquitous? And the moment we see this huge opportunity to think as a human family on one planet, we immediately go to the dark side. What about network neutrality? How do we ensure governments and companies don't monopolize this Internet of Things platform for a third industrial revolution for political purposes or commercial purposes? How do we ensure privacy? How do we secure data? How do we prevent cyber crime and cyber terrorism? How do we build resiliency into the system? How do we prevent disruptions, both natural and human caused? These are huge political and social issues that will engage you young people well into the mid part of the century. You're going to see this as the central political struggle of the next 3 generations, addressing these issues. But assuming tonight that we can address these very heady issues, and it's a big question mark, here's the prospect. Everyone in this room has a value chain, whether you're a family, small business, large company, where you're always marshaling and moving and storing and producing and consuming and recycling things. This means that if you have a smartphone, you can go up on this emerging Internet of Things platform already, because it's emerging, and you can, at almost zero marginal cost, you just need the service provider, you can get a transparent picture of all the economic data flowing around the world. Oh my God. When I was a young student at Wharton in 1963, my first professor said, young man, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Sellers never want the buyers to know what the sellers know, correct? Now everybody knows what everyone knows. We think the Snowden affair was a big deal. Now we have economic data that's totally open and transparent. This could democratize economic life, and a younger generation of social entrepreneurs steeped in sustainability could democratize the way we organize our economic activity. Though it is potentially really enormous. So here's how it works. Let's say you have a co-op, a nonprofit, a small business, a big company. You can go up on the Internet of Things platform that's emerging and cut your swath of big data that concerns your value chain. Just cut it out of the data. Your swath, your value chain, your big data. Then you know what you can do. You can mine that data on your value chain with analytics, create your own algorithms, create your own apps, so that you can dramatically increase your aggregate efficiency at every step of conversion on your value chain, and by doing so, dramatically increase your productivity, reduce your marginal costs, so you can stay competitive in a digitalized, very streamlined, global, automated capitalist market. And some of your marginal costs will already approach zero marginal cost, meaning that some goods and services are going to be abundant, free, produced by each other for the rest of us outside the market in the sharing economy. Now, we're hearing a lot about the sharing economy. What is this sharing economy? Capitalism, we thought it's a pretty old system. We didn't think it would ever get birth at its age, but it's given birth to a little progeny, and it's surprised as everybody else, frankly. Capitalism's given birth to the sharing economy. And this little fledgling economy, it's embryonic, it's unformed, it's kind of vague, and we're not sure how it's working. But what I would tell you, I suspect this is the first new economic system to enter onto the world stage since capitalism and socialism in the first half of the 19th century. It's a big deal. It's totally unformed. Now, capitalism, the parent, has to nurture this child that it gave birth to. It has to let it grow, let it find its identity, let it find its creativity, let it find its inner being, as we say. But if you're a parent, you know the child also transforms the parent every time. In this case, capitalism is going to be utterly transformed by the relationship it develops with this child as it nurtures its development. We are already seeing a hybrid economic system here in the millennial generation in this room. Part of your day, you're dealing with exchange of property in capitalist markets where there's a margin and profit. Part of the day, you're producing and sharing all sorts of goods and services with each other for nearly free at zero marginal cost outside the market in the sharing economy. Let's take a look at it. We have already seen the impact of digitalization in terms of reducing marginal cost to near zero and the disruptions they've created, because the first of the three internets is here. It's been 25 years since the web. So if we see what's happened with the communication internet, we're going to have a good picture tonight of what's happening now with the energy internet and transport and logistics. We always thought in the first and second industrial revolution that there are sellers and buyers, there's owners and workers. That's not going to go away. But we've got a new category here in the room. It's called prosumers. 3 billion people connected who at one time or another have produced and shared something for someone else at near zero marginal cost. We have millions of people right now tonight who are producing and sharing their own music at near zero marginal cost. The fixed cost of studio-type technology with your digital equipment is just like studios had 5 years ago. But the marginal cost is near zero. If you produce a piece of music, you want to share it, you can share it with one person or a billion people, near zero marginal cost, right? Doesn't cost you anything. We have millions of young people producing and sharing their own YouTube videos. All of YouTube is open source. No intellectual property, sharing the talents, near zero marginal cost. We have millions of young people that are producing and sharing news blogs and social media. And they're producing free ebooks. I got to tell you, my new book was out on Pirate Bay before we published, and they had it ranked before Amazon. We're not going to beat the young people. Better figure out how to join this, unless we outlaw all the technology. We have 6 million college students taking massive open online college courses taught by the best professors, the best universities, at near zero marginal cost. They're getting college credits. It's for free. Now, we're going to have to blend it with physical courses because there's a high dropout rate, but it's not going away. And what fascinates me is Wikipedia. I would have said this could never work. Millions of people constructing the knowledge of the world and fact-checking each other with more accuracy than our vertically integrated experts and authorities of the 20th century. And I can tell you, I look at our site, Apparently, people have nothing else to do all day but check every sentence of every site to see if you've made a mistake and cross-check each other. This is what people are doing, and it works. We're crowdsourcing the knowledge of the world. We've democratized knowledge on a nonprofit website. It's the 6th biggest website in the world. My Lord, I never thought that would happen. Some of the biggest industries of the 20th century have been disrupted. The music industry has shrunk. Television is a shadow of itself because the young people are producing and sharing all their videos with each other while they want to watch TV. The newspapers and magazines have gone out of business, book publishing suffering, but thousands of new enterprises have emerged, not just Google, Facebook, and Twitter. Thousands of startups, some of them profit, some of them nonprofit. They're creating the apps, the connectivity, and the platforms. So there can be a sharing economy. So part of it's capitalist market because the profit-making ones are using your data for third parties, but a lot of social entrepreneurialism is nonprofit as well. And I will say eventually more of it's going to be cooperatives because they can scale it more easily than capitalist enterprises. Watch what happens to Uber when all the young people who own their cars say, wait a minute, why are we working for Uber? It's our car, and we're sending profits to Silicon Valley, to Google. Why are we doing that? Why don't we just create a cooperative, get a low-interest loan from the bank? Anyone with any software knowledge can set up a GPS website, and then we share the revenue internally to our cooperative. We can do it cheaper because there's no profit to a third party. And if you have a choice here in Paris between Uber and Go Local with the same amount of efficiency and mobility, what would you choose? This conversation is now being had in the last 5 months everywhere I travel in the world. Uber didn't understand. They created a platform that by nature, its architecture is not vertical, it's distributed, the third industrial revolution platform. It's not centralized, it's collaborative. It's not top down, it scales laterally, not vertically. And there's the platform they created. Then they wanted to create a giant vertically integrated 20th century company to try to control a distributed collaborative platform in which low entry allows everyone to scale together in cooperatives. They didn't understand what they created. Not going to work for them. I love BlaBlaCar. I love Paris Lib with the electric vehicles. You're showing us the way. We thought there'd be a firewall here, and even though the near-zero marginal cost phenomena would impact the virtual world of entertainment, news, and knowledge, we're democratizing entertainment, news, and knowledge. No more elites. But we didn't think it would move over the firewall to the physical world of atoms. What I'm saying in the new book, we have broken through the firewall. It's called the Internet of Things, and on top of that, communication, energy, transport. We now have millions of people who are producing their own solar and wind electricity at near zero marginal cost and sharing it off-grid or back to the grid. We have millions of young people in the millennial generation who are in car sharing services, and pretty soon the marginal costs, as I'll explain later, are going down, down, down to zero marginal cost. Let's go back to Germany. What's happened since that first meeting with the Chancellor 10 years ago? We're at 30% solar and wind power on the power grid of this huge country, Germany. 30% of all the power in this country, near zero marginal cost solar and wind. It's going to be 40% in 8 or 10 years. It's going to be 100% by 2040. Because the fixed cost of solar and wind, those fixed costs are on an exponential curve, just like computer chips. Now, when I was a little kid, we only had a few computers. They cost millions of dollars, and the chairman of IBM predicted there may be a need for 7 computers, maybe 7 computers. We didn't anticipate the Intel computer chip, exponential curves, double the capacity, half the cost every 2 years. China now has a $25 smartphone. But here's what's interesting. We're on a similar exponential curve now for energy, solar and wind. A solar watt cost $76 to generate in 1979. $76 a watt. It's 50 cents a watt today. It's 38 cents a watt in 18 months from now. Do you see what's happening? We have in my global group power and utility companies quietly, right now, in America and Europe, buying 20-year long-term contracts for solar and wind at 4 cents a kilowatt hour. It is over for fossil fuel and nuclear. We know this inside the industry. Who's generating all this? By the way, once you pay the fixed cost for your solar panel, your wind turbine, your geothermal heat pump, the marginal cost of the energy we're generating in Germany It's near zero. The sun has not sent us a bill. The wind has yet to invoice us, and the geothermal heat is quiet. It's all free. Imagine what happens on a platform where you bring communication energy together, and every business can plug into that platform on every step of its conversion. How about that for aggregate efficiency, where you can move all your conversions at near zero marginal cost energy, and it's clean? Germany understands the journey. Who's producing the new power in Germany? There are 4 major power companies, EnBW, RWE, E.ON, and Vattenfall. They're vertically integrated global giants. We thought they were invincible. What happened to them in the last 10 years? It's the same thing that happened to the music companies, newspapers, magazines, television, and book publishing. Millions of small players, and this is happening in Denmark too, not just Germany, but millions of small players, farmers, small and medium-sized enterprises, urban dwellers, they came together and created electricity cooperatives, shared commons. Every one of them got low-interest loans from the banks. The government didn't do this. The banks gave them the loan because they could audit their energy savings, and they knew exactly how much premium energy would be sent to the grid. You pay back. There's no way to default. And they're producing the vast majority of this new power, millions of small players. This is power to the people, as we used to say in the 1960s. But this time it's figurative and literal. The big power companies are producing less than 7% of the energy. They're out of this game. They were the most efficient mechanisms for centralized energy. This is true. By creating vast, vertically integrated economies of scale, trust me, these were the most efficient mechanisms we could put out there. But they're not the most efficient in a platform that's designed to be distributed, collaborative, and open to communication, energy, and transport. You have to collect all this new energy in little bits, the sun here, the wind here, the geothermal heat. Every building and site is a node, and it favors lateral scale by cooperatives. Does this mean the end of the power companies? No, but they have to change their business model. Not tomorrow, but quick. We're not leaving the second industrial revolution tomorrow morning, but the smart companies have to realize they have to also be in the third industrial revolution. Vertical integration, and now distributed open source lateral scale. So we said 7 years ago, I debated the chairman of E.ON, Mr. Tyson, at their request, 3-hour debate. He said, I said, here's a new business model, and I introduced it. He said, we'll never do it. He did it 4 months ago. Here's the model. We said we have millions of people producing their own green energy now. Within 10 years, it's going to be tens of millions. Within 20 years, hundreds of millions. The curves are there. This technology is going to be as cheap as your little smartphones. It's moving. We will create cooperatives all over the world, and it's going to move faster in the developing world because they have a liability that's an asset, no infrastructure. We know, we saw it with cell phones. It's easier to create virgin infrastructure and cheaper than to transform old infrastructure. This is moving across rural India and sub-Saharan Africa already. This is beginning to happen with this technology. So we said to the power companies, there's a new model. In the new model, you make money by selling less and less electricity. What you do is you establish, I know that sounds counterintuitive, you set up partnerships with thousands of enterprises and you help manage the data flow on their value chains with them. You help erect and manage the digitalized energy internet. And you help manage that big data with them so that you can help them with their analytics and algorithms and apps so they can dramatically increase their aggregate efficiency and productivity and reduce their marginal cost, and they'll share some of those productivity gains back with the power company. It's called performance contracts. More money, sell less electricity. And we don't need the power companies. If they don't want to erect it, Schneider's in my group, they'd like to do it. The IT companies in my group, they would like to do it. The Amazon, everybody would like to do it. Startup companies would like to do it. We don't need them. ERDF and EDF have joined us in Nord-Pas-de-Calais. We're laying out, cooperatively the region is, I should say, the first really advanced here in France and Europe. And the CEO of EDF called personally. She's retired now, Michelle Ballon. She said, I'm going to join you. Mr. Poglio at ERDF said, let's talk. Met with the board. He said, we're there. GDF Suez. These companies are seeing you have to have two models, vertical integration, old energies, distributed central energies, the new era. But they're going to have to collaborate on an even playing field with SMEs, startups, and everybody in this room. No more control from the top. Unless you think this is just Europe, Premier Lee came into office as President-in-Chief, Premier Lee, and I was kind of surprised. I had no dealings in China. He put out his official biography, and up front, I actually thought it was a joke at first. I said to my wife, this is strange, I just saw this. He had read the Third Industrial Revolution book, he said. He was a fan, and he had instructed the government of China to begin moving on the themes that I'm talking about to you tonight, and they are moving. I've been back and forth in China to show you how fast China moves. After my first visit with the vice premier and the government, 11 weeks later, the national grid of China, the electricity grid chairman, announced an $82 billion four-year startup to completely digitalize the electricity grid of China in 4 years so that millions of Chinese people could produce and share their own solar and wind across the country. It's a revolution. The coming together of the communication internet with the digitalized renewable energy internet makes possible the automated GPS and soon driverless transport and logistics internet. You know, the automobile was the centerpiece of the entire second industrial revolution. We built the whole global economy on automobile purchases. The problem is the millennial generation of students in this room, you're not cooperating. You do not want to own vehicles, apparently. You want access to mobility. You know, owning a vehicle, that's grandma and grandpa, those two old cars sitting in the driveway, that's not us. My wife and I were sitting in a little restaurant, little Ethiopian restaurant down in kind of a hip part of Washington, saw a young millennial couple. They whipped out their smartphone. We knew what they were doing. They were on a street corner. Boom, they connected the communication internet and the website for car sharing. It immediately transferred them to the transportation logistics website for GPS. They locate a driver within 90 seconds of where they are, and within 90 seconds they were picked up, PayPal paid. Why would you ever want to own a car again? But for every car share, and you recall a book I wrote called The Age of Access in 2000? I said that the next generation would go from ownership to access. Thank God, thank you. You didn't make me out to be a fool, you're doing it. It took about 15 years. Larry Burns was the former executive vice president of General Motors. 5 years ago, he's been recently there. Well, we note that for every car shared, 15 cars are being eliminated from production. So Larry Burns did a study of Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's a University of Michigan professor. And he found that even now with this incipient automated car sharing network, they could eliminate 80% of the vehicles in that city right now with better mobility, with the car sharing now in place. Extrapolate Larry Burns' study. We have 1 billion cars, buses, and trucks in the world choking us in traffic, wasting our lives away. They are the #3 cause of global warming emissions. #1 is buildings. But in Germany, we are retrofitting every building and converting it into micro power plants in the surrounding sites so they're clean energy at zero marginal cost. And we're going to do that all over France and the rest of the world, hopefully in your generation. The #2 cause of global warming emissions I always mention because no one wants to talk about it, especially here in France, but everywhere. Even Al Gore won't talk about it. It's beef production, beef consumption, and animal husbandry agriculture, and it may even be #1. What's the matter with the human race? We're facing potential extinction, and nobody wants to bother to rethink the food chain and move down that food chain. If we can't do that, we're lost. The #3 cause of global warming emissions, transport. So we're going to eliminate, if Larry Burns is right and his projection from that one city, we're going to eliminate 80% of the vehicles in the world in the next generation. And the rest of the 200 million vehicles will be electric, they'll be fuel cell, they'll be operating on near zero marginal cost renewable energy generated across continental internets. They'll be 3D printed with recomposited material, and they'll be driverless. The first printed car is out. It's called the Stratus. It's an Italian car, beautifully designed. The Italians and the French know design. I don't know. I'm not going to get into which one is better. You both know design. The rest of us are so far behind. So what does this mean? Starting with the millennials in this room, I will say to you, your children, your grandchildren are never going to own cars again. It's a steep curve. So what does this mean for the transportation industry? Change the business model. They're still selling millions of cars, except for Volkswagen. They're selling lots of cars now. That's a cheap shot, I guess. They're selling lots of vehicles, but we can see the curve with your generation. So increasingly, they're going to have to move from selling the vehicles to helping to erect and manage automated GPS-guided driverless transport networks for road and then rail and water. If they don't, there are so many other industries that would like to do it. It's about not one or the other, but how do you get from the old to the new? There are opportunities everywhere. And if you're into 3D printing here, that's the manufacturing, if you will, mechanism of the third industrial revolution. You plug that 3D printing into the platform, and you can increase your aggregate efficiencies and productivity and dramatically reduce your costs. You're into additive manufacturing. You're using 1/10 of the materials because you're building up a whole product. You're not cutting it away. And a lot of the 3D printing is using recycled plastic, recycled paper, recycled metal. All you have is the cost of collection. And now we're starting to power those 3D printers with our own solar and wind off-grid, zero marginal cost. And we're beginning to send it to market in electric vehicles at very low marginal cost. And in a few years, there'll be driverless or drones taking it to the market or the sharing economy. Real reduction in marginal cost of transport. The best way to understand this transition is toys. Has anybody here been to Ravensburg, Germany, where they invented the commercial toy, this beautiful medieval town? Don't you people travel to Germany? One person? Thank you. You're probably German, right? Okay. So this is a beautiful medieval town. They came up with the commercial toy. So traditionally, a parent comes home, and when their little girl's about 2.5 or 3, they say, look, Santa Claus gets you toys at Christmas, but we're buying you this toy. We bought this at a store. This little toy is your property. This is not your brother's toy. It's not your sister's toy. It's your toy. You have to take care of it. They're introducing this little child to property and markets. And the first thing that kid heard from mom and dad, not my brother's toy or sister's toy. Power, status, and negotiation. They're learning that it's a possession to defend. It's property. Now we have millennial parents in their late 20s who are going up on these toy websites that are shared with thousands of toys by category. They pay a one-time subscription fee, then they're in the system. They're bringing the toy home to their 2.5-year-old daughter, and they're saying, another little girl really had fun with this toy. And she took really good care of it because she knew you'd want to play with this toy, and you'll take good care of it because one day someone else will play with the toy. The child is learning the toy is not a possession to defend. It's not property. It's not status. It doesn't identify who you are. It's an access to an experience for a moment. You steward it for the next person. I believe we're in a split system. The child will learn about property exchange and markets, absolutely. They're going to also learn at a very early age about access to experience in networks, and you pass it on. It's a hybrid system, part capitalist market, part sharing economy. They're getting ready to share the vehicles, share the homes with couch surfing and Airbnb, share everything. How do we pay for this? We have a memorandum that we put out here, correct? Digital Europe, has that been put out to everybody in this room? About a year, I hope it has. I've been told it was. About a year and a half ago, Prime Minister Renzi of Italy took over the rotating presidency of the EU and asked me to join him in Venice to declare Digital Europe, the next stage of the journey, which we did. The EU has always had to have a new vision periodically to move forward unless it stumbles back. We started with the coal and steel community. France, Germany, 6 countries came together. Energy, no more wars in the Ruhr Valley. We killed too many people over energy. Then the EU created Maastricht for a political union. Then the EU created the euro for a monetary union. Then the EU created the 28 member states for a geographic union. What's the next stage of the journey? Digital Europe. So I put together a memorandum which was supposed to be circulated to you for President Juncker and his leadership team, and it outlines this next journey that we're heading to in Europe. And that is to take this whole infrastructure and move it across the whole EU, region to region, like Nord-Pas-de-Calais, connected like Wi-Fi for 1 billion people. 500 million in the Union, 500 million in the partnership regions in the Mediterranean. How do we pay for this? This is a discussion in Brussels that we've had. The money is there. It's absolutely there. It's just we're not spending it in the right ways. And in 2011, which was a bad recession year, for example, we spent $741 billion US equivalent dollars on infrastructure in Europe. Private and public monies. $741 billion. The money is there, but we're using it to build new old. New old. We're pouring it into a second industrial revolution infrastructure, centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel nuclear power, internal combustion transport, and we know that productivity maxed 20 years ago at 13 to 20% aggregate efficiency. If we simply reprioritize and spend 25% in each region of that European investment funds on the new platform like Nord-Pas-de-Calais has done, this generation will be able to turn the corner with a new journey. In March, the European Investment Bank changed its priorities. Chancellor Merkel, President Juncker came together with the president of the bank, and then they asked me to lay out this narrative, which we did, and the EIB has now changed its priorities. You want monies from the EIB in your region? Here are the big categories: digitalized communication, digitalized energy, digitalized transport. So now there's no excuse. Every industry will be involved in this rollout: telecom, cable, electricity power, logistics, transport, ICT, consumer electronics, manufacturing, because we have to build out an infrastructure here, a smart infrastructure. This will engage millions of workers because in France, we have to retrofit every building in France in 30 years. We can't turn them into power plants and micro power plants until they're made efficient. That is hugely labor intensive. That's millions of jobs for the construction industry and new energy savings companies. And the way you pay for it is easy. The ESCOs get tax advantages from the government. They get loans from the banks. The banks are happy to give the loans because it's paid back through the energy efficiency savings. And then once that performance contract's paid out, the owners of the buildings get a free ride. They get a new building with energy efficiency. Then we have to install all the solar and wind and geothermal technology. Who's going to make all that technology? It should be made here in France, in the regions. Who's going to install it? Robots aren't going to install that. Millions of workers are going to install it. We have to change the entire electricity grid of France from dumb to smart and from servo-mechanical to digitalized. Who's going to lay out all the underground cable? Who's going to put in the smart meters in every single building in France, make sure they're operating and connected? It's a lot of workers. We have to take the transportation grid of France and transform it from dumb to smart road, rail, and water, and from internal combustion to electric and fuel cell. Who's going to put in the charging stations and the fuel outlets everywhere? The next 40 years is a massive build-out. The money is there. It needs to be reprioritized. And if little Nord-Pas-de-Calais can do this old industrial region of France, go there. I tell people to go there. Delegations are coming from around the world. We're in year 3. 3,000 businesses have come through seminars. All 7 universities created a consortium for a new pedagogy. We're taking 200 high schools there, and we're getting a credit from the EU for $850 million, leverage against private equity. They're going to turn all 200 high schools into data centers, power plants, and automated transport hubs as learning environments. And they're going to do that in the next 6 years. Those are just a few of the projects. Every region can do this. There's nothing mysterious about this. It's just changing the narrative and understanding the story. Lastly, the reason I wrote this book, this is an economic plan. This is not an environmental plan. This is an economic plan. But it's the only way I know that may give us any chance of addressing climate change between your generation, your children, and grandchildren. Zero marginal cost is the ultimate metric for reducing ecological footprint. Imagine if 7 billion people equipped with little smartphones at near zero marginal cost all day long can use analytics and algorithms and apps to find new ways to dramatically increase their aggregate efficiencies and productivity and reduce their costs. That means that more of us are using less of the Earth's resources, less of it and getting more out of it. We're not wasting it. We use less because we get more out of it in the transitions. Everyone can be their own efficiency experts here. The technology is cheap now as we interconnect. Then if what we do produce is shared, share the vehicles, share the toys, share the homes, that means more of us are using less of the Earth, and we're in a circular economy, and we're redistributing all this over and over again. Nothing goes to the landfill. That energy internet should be in 25 years. There's no reason why everyone shouldn't be producing their own energy, just like every one of you is your own communication system to the world for $25. And moving to automated transport where we all can be a hub for GPS guidance and sharing networks. Everything I've said tonight is being done right now It's about scale up and build out and understanding the story. Last thought. I'm constantly asked whether I'm an optimist or a pessimist. I've never been an optimist and I've never been a pessimist. If one's a social activist, neither of those categories are at help at all. If you're an optimist, you're waiting around for the good news. If you're a pessimist, you're waiting around for the bad news. I'm only guardedly hopeful that we can achieve this transition, but I'm not naive. History is mercurial. Technology is not fate. It's not determined like a lot of futurists say. It's just an enabling mechanism. There are periods in history where good ideas are pushed back, where events overwhelm our opportunity to move forward, where poor leadership or lack of will gets in the way, and just sometimes bad luck. But if there's a plan B to what I've outlined here, I have no idea what it could be. Stay in the second industrial revolution, a dying economy, no opportunity for a young digital generation, and climate change now prepared for mass extinction. Here's why I'm guardedly hopeful. I'll leave you with this. There are three changes in consciousness that I've noticed, and you digital young generation here, tell me if this is right. I'm noticing a change in consciousness in 3 categories of life that are fundamental between the older generation and the digital generation. Number 1, our different ideas about freedom. Number 2, our different ideas about power. And number 3, our different ideas about community. My generation has a very, very well thought out view of freedom. It started with the French and the American Revolution. Each individual is a sovereign agent. Each individual drives for their own autonomy. Each individual seeks to be self-sufficient, not dependent, not beholden, an island to ourselves. We are each sovereign. We are autonomous agents. For us, freedom is exclusivity. For a young generation, growing up digital, connected in Skyping and global classrooms, in Facebook with 1 billion other young people, the idea of autonomy must be death. I want to be autonomous. Is there any person under the age of 30 that wants to be an island to themselves, not beholden to others? You grew up on interconnectivity on the internet, and for you, freedom is the ability to share in more and more complex networks and relationships in greater communities of meaning. Identity is not bound up by autonomy, it's bound up by the richness of the relationships, correct? We're going to have to rewrite the Constitution. We're going to have to rewrite French and American history here because this is a different idea of freedom. There's a difference in the notion of power. Our generation, since post-Westphalia and the nation state, we grew up with power. We know what it is. It's a pyramid. There's no other way to define power. There's some at the top and then the rest at the bottom. But for your generation, when you view an institutional behavior, whether you view a government or your business school here or a political party or any other institution, you ask, is the institutional behavior centralized, vertically integrated, patriarchal, top-down, proprietary, and closed, or is this institutional behavior distributed, collaborative, open source, laterally scaled? Do I have this right? For you, power is lateral. And that is, you found out from your own experience in interconnectivity that the more you share your talents with the network, the more social capital you create, and the network benefits everyone in this. You are a generation of social entrepreneurs. Apparently, you didn't read Adam Smith. Adam Smith said every individual only wants to pursue their self-interest and never ever cares about the public interest, but in pursuing their self-interest, somehow the common good is bettered. But this generation of social entrepreneurs, you believe that by giving your talents open source to the networks you're in, it benefits the network and increases the social capital of each of the participants. That is a sea change. Finally, the notion of community. I grew up in a post-Westphalia geopolitical world. Each individual is a sovereign, and every nation's a sovereign, and the nations, on behalf of the sovereign individuals, compete with other nations, both in the marketplace and the battlefield, for scarce resources in a zero-sum game. But we have a younger generation now growing up in this Internet of Things platform of a third industrial revolution, and you're just beginning to experience the biosphere as your indivisible community. The biosphere is that sheath, it's only 40 miles from the stratosphere to the oceans, where all life and chemicals interact to establish the ecosystems of life on this little oasis in the universe. We have young people coming home now, and they have biosphere consciousness. They're coming home, teenagers, and they're saying, why is Dad using so much water while he's shaving? We're wasting the energy of the planet. Why is the television on, that little red light? There's nobody in that room. We're wasting the resources of the planet. Why do we have 2 cars sitting in the driveway most of the week? Why don't we car share? We're wasting the materials of the planet. And the one I particularly like, even here in Paris it's starting, where did that piece of steak come from? That's the real revolution here. Where'd that beef come from? We've got teenagers coming home and they're saying, did this hamburger come from a rainforest? Did they have to destroy the trees for 4 inches of topsoil to graze that little cow for my burger? And the kids are smart because they know those trees are the home of rare species of animal and plants that will go extinct if those tree canopies go down. And they know if the trees are destroyed to graze the cow for the hamburger on the plate, it means the trees aren't there to absorb CO2 from industrial emissions and the planet's temperature goes up from deforestation. And if that happens, they understand that some farmer can't feed her children because she's got spring floods and summer droughts because of the hamburger on the plate. These young people, these high school students, are starting to learn ecological footprint. They're learning that everything we do intimately affects the well-being of all of our fellow human beings and our fellow creatures, our ecosystems, and our planet. It is actually true that when a butterfly flaps its wings, the universe changes. We know this in our biosphere. So we're beginning to understand, a younger generation, that ecological footprint means my well-being depends on the well-being of all the other creatures that live together in this evolutionary family in this one biosphere community. It is the indivisible community. We say in America, one nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Actually, it's one biosphere indivisible, with freedom to be able to flourish on this beautiful planet where life exists. Here's my hope. Started here at HEC. This is one of the top-ranked business schools in the world. We got a generation in this room tonight. Start a revolution. Rethink. It always starts in Paris, by the way. Troublemakers. Start a revolution. Theory and practice revolution. Rethink economic theory and practice. Introduce the laws of energy and thermodynamics into the curriculum. Make sure that sustainability isn't just a whitewashed or greenwashed word, but make sure sustainability means we change our business models, we change the way we relate to our fellow creatures, we change the way we organize life on this planet. It starts with a young generation. And with your business school, join together with other business schools. Start moving this new Internet of Things platform, Third Industrial Revolution, out into every region of the world. And here in the business school, help the regions do it. Put your pedagogy into the community so that whatever you're learning here, you're learning in the community and hopefully getting credits here from the teachers, faculty. If not you, who? The best and brightest here in these business schools, it's an obligation, it's a responsibility. And the real bottom line here, for all of you who are 18 and 22, when you're my age, your grandchildren are going to look back at you and they're going to either be in a cataclysm or they're going to be in an earth that's starting to be replenished, and they're going to ask you, what did you do? And what you want to say to them is that we took control of our destiny. We went out of the kind of customary day-to-day world and we imprinted an indelible stamp on the future. We did it with steadfastness, with humility, with care, and a sense of deep play. Not deep work, deep play. And together, a young generation helped change the world so that we could make this planet worth living in again. And the last thing I would say, the less you think when you get older, you start to learn about things. I can tell you I'm 70. I'm as confused today as I was 20. The only thing I know is when I get up every morning, life, I'm not sure what this is. It's such a mysterious little experiment. It is the only thing that's really awesome. All the other awesomes are negations. This is really awesome. It's life. It's existence. We want it. No matter how poor our condition, people crave life every day. And so do our fellow creatures. They struggle for life, and they have a right to be here with us or without us. And they're as irreducible important as we are. So what I'm hoping here, it's the struggle for life. We want to make sure that this little experiment in the universe goes on, that unborn, not yet here, our species, our fellow creatures, can enjoy their moment to flourish. Good night.
Dear Mr. Rifkin, you are still walking, but I would still like to address you a huge thank you on behalf of the whole HEC community for your stimulating message. Before we launch the second part of this exciting evening, normally there should be a Wisenbly slide on the platform. We have a sharing platform where you can send SMS or messages online. You will soon have the link here. So it's free, it's anonymous, and it enables you to send questions, comments, reactions that will be monitored somewhere here in the front. It will be useful for our Q&A session and will also be valuable in the minutes of this event. I won't wait anymore to introduce Rodolphe Durand, founder and scientific director of the Society and Organization Center, SNO Center, and soon Bénédicte Févre-Tavigno, who will be back.
Thank you. I think that what Jeremy Rifkin just said is a bit humbling. So I want to say also that I don't know if we started a revolution here in the business school, but that you students are actually really part of this, many of you. At the same time, you have the faculty members, your professors, who are also considering these big issues and trying to commit to think the different changes that are happening, as you saw this afternoon with the different workshops or the conference by Hervé Letreux. And here at HEC, for almost a decade now, although you don't know it, it's in these buildings, these offices. I mean, people do research and try to think these big changes across different departments. And this initiative is called Society and Organizations. So you will see some of them, these faces. Maybe you will recognize some of your professors, maybe some other people you don't know. They are PhD students who devote their life to think and work on these topics. And so if you are interested by knowing them more, you can go to the page, which is hec.edu/SNO for Society and Organizations. But in the meanwhile, I would like just to let you watch the short movie that these people did for you. It won't last long, it's just 2 minutes and a half. And then Bénédicte will also mention the other initiatives with the students, the pedagogical programs, and I know that the students prepared also a short movie. Thank you.
I dream of a world where management is used for expanding wealth and guaranteeing peace.
Where every child is born with equal opportunities and granted equal access to knowledge.
And then I try to make it just a bit more like it.
Where we preserve our natural resources and share them equitably.
I dream of a world where social distinctions are truly based on consideration of common good.
Where all will protect the bounties of the earth.
Where nature and society live in peace.
Where access to energy is no longer an issue, and where renewables become the most important supply of electricity.
I dream of a world in which climate change is no longer technologies affordable to all, as well as responsible new consumption ways generalized.
I dream of a world where people take action and collaborate to build effective solutions to the massive social and environmental challenges that we face today.
I dream of a world where people from all around the world come together, and while embracing our differences, we can work towards our common goal of making our world more peaceful and more habitable.
As a member of the SNO Center, I engage to research on ground challenges in the management literatures and to adopt unconventional approaches to address neglected and significant societal problems.
As a researcher and teacher, I try to prove that sharing your knowledge with others not only gives you a warm glow, but it can also make you better off.
As a teacher and SNO member, I commit to help students develop systemic intelligence, a sense of responsibility, a creativity to invent new ways of doing business.
As a teacher, I try to stir curiosity in students, ask them to take nothing for granted.
As the SNO founder, I engage myself in providing a theory and tools that help understand how norms and values diffuse in social systems, give advantage to organizations and make them succeed.
As a management scholar, I try to trigger change among companies and students for business to serve society.
As a scholar, I try to build on the similarities and understand the differences to achieve this goal.
As a member of the SNO Research Center, I make sustainability a central component of my life as a citizen, of my research, and of my teaching.
As a researcher and teacher, I am committed to make current and future leaders aware of environmental issues and to demonstrate that renewables are not only a constraint, but a profitable business opportunity.
As a business school member, I am committed to making sustainability business as usual at HEC and developing engaging, active learning programs to provide students with the necessary skills, motivation, and ambition to build innovative, sustainable business models and organizations.
As an SNO member, I aspire to convince businesses that they are also part of this world and they should grow and prosper with it in the long run. What would you do?
So with these nice professors that you could see in this movie, and with the whole HEC team, our intention also through the SNO Center is just simply to help prepare students, future business leaders, to not only anticipate and face the huge, major societal and environmental challenges, transformation that will occur, but also to become actors of these transformations in a sustainable and inclusive way. Now, I suggest we listen to the students who already also prepared a movie. It's a movie made by MBA and master students with students from all programs of HEC.
Normally when people think of climate change, they think of polar bears going extinct and melting ice caps. But for me, I think of it in a more selfish way. It's really, I think it's the survival of me and the survival of the human race in the future.
To be honest, in daily life, I don't realize it, but I know the outcome is still there.
Climate change is going to be a big threat of our generation, but I think it's also going to be an opportunity for businesses and individuals to be really creative in finding solutions because there is no way around it.
I think it's worldwide driven by feasibility.
I would want them to incorporate that interest in their day-to-day operations, not only from a green marketing standpoint, sometimes greenwashing, but impacting on operations.
I think climate will definitely matter to business in 30 years because we cannot keep putting off the conversation over and over again. Businesses as part of the global economy are going to have to become involved in the conversation as well, in my opinion, to a higher extent to what they are doing today.
One of the reasons why I'm choosing to switch my occupation is just to do something that I know would create a positive change, whether it be environment or society.
Environmental and more in general ethics has to be important in my life.
My focus will definitely be on jobs in companies that have a proven environmentally friendly business record, or at least have a credible agenda of changing their practices.
I really think it is important that HEC prepares its students to these evolutions.
We are a business school, so we should know the economic side of being environmentally friendly.
As an MBA student, I would like to see that to be mentioned in, like in our courses.
The fact that HEC has this Master in Science Sustainability and Social Innovation program is already a pretty big part to actually committing to fighting against climate change. However, about everyday actions here on campus, this starts with the cafeteria, this starts with the buildings, their energy consumption.
Threat. Duty.
Opportunity.
Meet the 2 degrees challenge. Climate is our business.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask Claire Tutenui and our panelists to come. So Claire is heading Entreprise pour l'Environnement, which is a French association representing the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, which is a global organization trying to mobilize the whole business community on sustainability. Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here and to introduce this high-level dialogue on how business can contribute to tackle the climate change. Yes, please come on and sit down. After these visionary presentations and in front of an audience of several hundreds, decarbonation is a challenge. As Hervé Letreux told you earlier today, science indicates that maintaining the average warming under 2 degrees, which is how we can limit the number of catastrophes, means that net anthropic human emissions at world level should start diminishing around 2020 and be zeroed before the end of the century, around 2080. This means that before you retire, the young generation present here, the world should have virtually stopped using fossil fuels. It's a revolution, we heard that. COP21 is a key moment of this journey and a real moment to widen the number of people who are getting into this issue and working on it. There are solutions. The problem is to have the collective will to deploy them and to overcome a number of resistance from the losers of the transition, potential losers. Dialogue is between you, several hundreds future leaders and friends, who see you, speakers, as role models, and will listen to you before they decide to follow your route. On stage, we have 4 exceptional alumni who have already dedicated a lot of time and energy to climate and energy reduction. We have Bertrand Badré, Managing Director and CFO of the World Bank Group, which has become an eminent voice on climate. With him, climate is included in the work on the Financial Stability Board, advising the G20. Before this, he has been CFO, he has been a banker in Société Générale and Crédit Agricole, a partner in Lazare, and also a Sherpa of President Chirac for Africa in 2008, which means that here he represents both the financial community and the development aspirations. Emmanuel Faber, CEO of Danone. You can sit here because I will stay standing, actually. So don't hesitate. Emmanuel Faber, CEO of Danone, which he joined in '97 after a start as a consultant and a moment as Director General of Legris Industrie. He has had a very brilliant career in Danone, of course, where he switched from CFO to operational responsibilities, such as for Asia and Pacific. He has been CEO from a year ago and vice chairman of the board. He is also member and a very dedicated member of the board, founding member, board of Danone Communities, of the Livelihood Fund, and of the Fond Danone for l'écosystème. Fond Danone for l'écosystème, this was in French. Bruno Lafont is co-chairman of Lafarge-Holcim, the new world leader in construction materials formed this summer, as you have probably seen. Before this, he has been chairman and CEO of Lafarge from 2006. After a complete career in Lafarge, continuity sometimes has merit. He transformed the group through major acquisitions in emerging countries where the demand for new cities is massive. And he has also done a lot to push the professions to more environmental conduct of this very heavy emitting industry, in particular through the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Tristan Lecomte founded and managed Alter Eco, maybe even while you were still a student, which was a leading fair trade and organic brand on the French market from 1998 to 2011. He now leads another business, but it's already part of the new economy or of the sharing economy, which he founded in 2008, Pure Projet. Pure Projet has invented a new business in setting and a new business model through a network of clients and partners and millions of trees planted. We will hear more about this. I would like to initiate this dialogue with asking you a first question, which is how did you personally become climate champions? Because I'm sure it was not part of your HEC program at the time. So Bruno Lafont, you are probably, as a big emitter, the one who heard first about CO2 issues.
So, well, very, very happy to be invited here, very happy to be back into this school, which I loved, more than all other schools I visited. Leaving the school, I came into other things, but very, very soon I joined Lafarge. And my first meeting with the chairman of Lafarge at that time was on values. And part of the values were respect. And part of the respect was respect for the environment. There were a lot of things that they were already doing, and he told me, you know, if the boss is not doing what he says, it's impossible. Then the successor of this chairman became the chairman and CEO, and this guy went to Rio because he had understood that climate change environment would become something very crucial for our industry. And that was something which inspired us. But during all this time, he was setting the goals. So when I became CEO of a country, which was an emerging country, which was Turkey in the 90s, early 90s, I discovered that a cement plant was doing or having an enormous impact on the neighborhood. It was first dust, then trucks driving through the... And then at the end, CO2 and emissions. And I remember that the government in Turkey at that time was really asking and industry to improve. And I understood at that point, where I was managing these things, that environment was probably a good way to create a difference. Not just to be a nice guy, but to create a difference. Then I pursued my career. My boss introduced me to several things. He let me understand what the World Business Council for Sustainable Development was, which was the first, group of people starting to think, or business people starting to think really on actions on environment. And when I became CEO, I said to me, I'm convinced that environment is critical. I'm convinced that climate change will be a critical subject. I'm convinced that sustainable development, moreover, is completely essential to our success. But I have so many things to do. My former boss is so good in that, he will continue to do it for 2 years. And then I started to get into the subject, slowly, slowly. And I discovered 2 or 3 things. The first thing was climate change is confirmed to be extremely crucial. We were the first company to have done a commitment before all others and before any regulation came, and that was under the umbrella of a WBCSD. And I just managed to set a process within the company for the goals that we have set for 2020 were not decided by the boss, but by many, many, many people in the company, which helped us to create not just a constraint on people, but a desire to contribute to change the world and to become a good example of companies, aiming to reduce emissions and also to create a much better world in construction. As you know, cement is an industry which emits a lot of CO2 because of the chemical transformation, because of the fuels we are using, and electricity, but also concrete, which is the product at the end of the process, is improved and improved and improved over time. So what we are doing, we are reducing our emissions and we are innovating into sustainable concrete and sustainable construction. So, but I'm sure I will do more. I will speak more later. But
Emmanuel Faber, you started your social businesses really from the vision of poverty and how to get people out of poverty. How did you move from this very social concern of social responsibility, vision of social responsibility, into more climate issues?
Well, we created this social business in 2006. I was born in 1964, so I'm a pretty old guy. And the question of climate and nature, I think, was something that I had already in a number of occasions had opportunities to come up with and to face. The first thing is probably just to say that being born in the French Alps, nature has been part of myself, and I can say has probably provided me my first real spiritual experiences, and to a certain degree, I think I had always had some part in myself that was bonded with the protection of this incredible universe. But I parked it somewhere. And as you said, here in HEC, there was no particular topic about this, and not many people were talking about this. I found myself 20 years later, in 1994, being the managing director of a company supplying equipment for construction, negotiating a contract with the Chinese government in Shenzhen to supply huge equipment for the Three Gorges Dam. And at that point in time, we won. We won a contract to build absolutely giant equipment that would put concrete into the dam for 7 years in a row and would basically create a hydropower facility that would supply 10% of the total Chinese need. And I was quite happy because our US competitors couldn't really compete. And the reason was because Exim Bank, which is the bank that facilitates exports for US constructors, had been advised that this project was having big environmental concerns. And I think that probably there was some, and of course there was some political bias behind all of this, but that was the first time where I realized that what I was going to do was criticized openly by activists, and second, because other people were under the constraints of these activists, I was going to win a huge contract, and we won. And I flew back to Europe with a sort of mixed feeling. And I started to really think about the fact that we as business people, we as humans, probably had an impact on climate. A number of years later, I started to discuss, including with Bénédicte here, Fèvre-Tavigno, and she sent me an email, I think that was at the time, saying, we just had an incredible guy visiting us in this kind of conference. The name of the guy was Ray Anderson. He was the founder of Interface in the US. And Benedict sent me the text of the speech, and she was saying, just read this. I mean, it's eye-opening. And I did. And that guy had transformed a business which was basically using a lot of oil to do exactly this, these tiles and moquette in France, we say, into a net positive carbon company, revolutionizing his company in like less than 10 years. And suddenly I realized that it was possible and that looking at climate was a huge source of innovation and reinvention of companies. So that's how I myself got involved with that within Danone. And then speaking to other people, I realized that it also was a huge source of motivation. As Bruno just said, people just wanting not only to be doing good business, but also changing the world or understanding that they were doing something right for their environment, their nature, and so that's how, at the end of the day, if I just make a long story short, it led 1.5 thousand managers of Danone over the last 5 years to reduce our carbon intensity by 40%. And as Bruno said, it was not my decision. It was really a wide sweeping movement of people enthusiastically looking at redesigning our business processes to achieve this. So it's been a long consciousness awareness where I received a lot from other people and I shared that.
Thank you very much, Bertrand Badré. It's only in the recent years that the financial community has finally decided to get into it. So you probably have started to see some things in developing countries, but how did you get to address the 2 degrees challenge?
Well, that's part of my pilgrimage, if I may say. I spent most of my private sector career in what I call the dark side of finance, and I've moved to the supposedly bright side of finance. It's not that clear, actually. It's not that dark and it's not that bright, but really, I mean, like Emmanuel, I mean, I spent my first years also in the Alps, and so I was probably touched also by the beauty of the landscapes, etc. So it's still extremely important, and it probably created some favorable underlying conditions. But my first real contact with this issue was when I received a call from Michel Cantu, so who had been the managing director of the IMF for 14 years, and he had been appointed by the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations, and a bunch of international organizations to discuss the question of access to water. So thank you to provide Evian water, Emmanuel, by the way. And we had this G8 summit in Evian, actually, to discuss, among other things, water. And so he asked me to join a panel that he was chairing to see how can we finance access to water and sanitation in the world. And the truth is that there are a lot of connections between the water question and climate. And this is when I really felt, probably for the first time, very intimately, that we were living in a very fragile and very finite world. So we cannot play with it. And that's, I mean, water is very interesting because like climate, it's both extremely global. I mean, there is the same level of water on Earth today as it was 4 billion years ago. It's just different quality and different location. At the end of the day, it's still there. So we have to treat it properly. And it's also very local. You don't transport water. I mean, the water you have here, you don't bring it to the US. I mean, maybe some Evian bottle, but it's a different story.
The exception.
It's the exception, actually. And climate is the same. It's totally global, and we have to have a global approach. But at the end of the day, you don't transport climate. It's very difficult. So that's where really I was touched by that. And there is strong connection between global warming and impact on water. I mean, look at the number of countries and regions which are now facing water scarcity. It's not just related to climate, but it's partly related to climate. So that's really where I touch with my finger this. I also touch how complicated it was. That was my first immersion in international discussion. And it's not just by you bring people around the table and you think that all these people will share your good intentions and your good views and come to a conclusion in 5 minutes. It doesn't work this way. I mean, people have a different visions on things. They don't share the same values. They have selfish interests. I mean, I was listening to Jeremy Rifkin. I like his prophetism, and I think we need prophets. But we have to kind of compose prophetism with realism. And when I come to chair the board of the World Bank, I mean, you have to be realistic. How do we move this? Not just by a prophecy. So we have to find the appropriate way forward, and that's what I found on water. Everybody agrees it's important. But that's not enough. Yeah, that's really not enough. And so that's really how I first came to that. Then I went back to the dark side. So I worked for Michel Consu, I worked with Jacques Chirac on these issues, so I felt the political side of things, and I went back to the dark side of finance. I've tried to, when I was at Crédit Agricole, we tried to work, it was called La Banque Verte, or the Green Bank. So, this was nothing to do with climate, actually. No. This was related to the farming roots of this business. But still, there was a feeling that we needed to do something on climate. Unfortunately, it was right in the middle of the financial crisis, and I must say the order of priorities was somewhat different. So that was a frustration. So we've tried to do some stuff. We work with some people, including people in France. But that's why when I came to the World Bank, that I really was struck by the importance of the topic. Not only because institutionally the World Bank is the largest tool in the international toolbox to address this type of issue. So we have the money, we have the expertise, and we are paid to do that. So that was my job. On top of that, being French, I had some connection with the French leading the COP21 exercise. So even if when you work for international organization, you are supposed to forget your nationality. Well, I don't forget where I'm coming from France and from HEC. That's important. But so that's something important. But more importantly, what is the mission of the World Bank today? It has been assigned by our shareholders, our 188 government shareholders. As they say, you have to eradicate poverty and you have to share prosperity. And there is no way we would achieve these two goals, fighting poverty and sharing prosperity, if you don't tackle climate. And I finish with this. This is for me so crucial that you cannot face the development issues without tackling climate. And you cannot face climate if you don't tackle development. At the end of the day, the rich people will escape the consequences of climate change. Yeah, you can pay your air condition, you can hide yourself. Most people in this room will never suffer anything. Well, we really find a way. The problem is the poor people. These guys have nowhere to hide. And that's where, for me, it's critical that we don't miss the appointment of this year. We shouldn't miss the SDG adopted this week. It shouldn't just be a political statement. It must be reality. And COP21 must build on this reality. And we must be the tool to put this in place.
We'll get back to this later. I can tell you one comment on these three journeys to climate consciousness is that you don't have that time. I think action has to start very quickly, and everybody took some time to realize, but now it's urgent. Fortunately, Tristan Lecomte as a founder of, started much faster. As a founder of Alter Eco and Pure Project, you also have started from development and social issues more than from climate, but you have now turned and are involving yourself mostly on tree reforestation. Can you explain your journey and your business model, actually?
Thank you very much. I'm very happy as well to be back here in this school. I'm very happy as well that we talk about climate, because first, when I started Alter Eco, my colleagues from HEC were asking me, when do you come back to work? In '98, because it was not working. It was to blow a fuse or to become a hippie to go to work in sustainability. And now we have sustainability departments in most of the main companies, and we talk about sustainability here, and there is, thanks to Benedict and many people around you as well, masters and many programs for students to learn about it. So it's good to see that the two worlds of business and sustainability now merge and converge, because we need to innovate a lot. And it's indeed, it's a crisis, climate, but as well it's a great opportunity. I will illustrate it with my own case. So I had started this fair trade and organic company, Alter Eco, and our clients were asking us, what do you do to fight climate change? Because, okay, you're organic, you're fair trade, you try to work on better packaging, but you import products from all over the world. And I was wondering, what can I do? And one day in Peru, in a lost village in Santa Rosa, there is no road, there is no electricity, nothing. There was a student making her thesis on the captation of CO2 thanks to agroforestry models, and nobody did understand what she was doing. But actually, thanks to her, I started to think, oh yeah, maybe we can plant trees within the supply chains of where we buy the products from. We are buying the cocoa from these farmers. Then we started to plant 5,000 trees, 20,000, etc. And now there we've planted, the farmers have planted 3 million trees. And as well, we've helped them to protect 400,000 hectares of virgin forest which is the heart of the ecosystem of the agricultural area of the region. And now UNESCO is an area that is in which we are included, which is of 2.4 million hectares as a biosphere area. And all this just by a kind of serendipity. When I started to plant these trees with the farmers, I never thought it would become work. I thought nobody would be interested. I just did it for Alter Rico. I thought only our clients who are really engaged, they want then that our products are fair trade, organic, and climate neutral. But I didn't think others would be interested. And then, indirectly, thanks to Danone and their engagement at that time, I think it was in 2010 or something, Franck Ribot announced that Evian water will be fully offsetted within a year or two. They had started a big mangrove project in Senegal. And then I got a call from Nestlé Waters, who tells us, oh, I've seen that you plant a tree within the supply chain of your supplier. Can you do that for the water sources? So we started to work with them. And now we work with many large-scale companies like that, so Nespresso, Ben & Jerry's, Chanel, Clarins, many people in the food or in the cosmetic sector, but as well in the energy sector or in many places where more and more companies now understand that they need to act for climate as well because it links them back with their ecosystem. They know very well, especially the brands that have a good business, but they source product from areas which are degraded, and they fear that in the future they cannot source anymore their good quality product from there if they don't participate to the regeneration of the ecosystem, and if they protect their crops and the farmers, especially the small-scale farmers, because as you said, they are not well equipped to fight climate change, so to help them to adapt to climate change and to secure the procurement. So this is a concept of insetting that we are not the founder of this concept, but we developed it quite a lot. The idea is not to do offsetting far away. Offsetting has a very bad image because it happens very far away in projects that sometimes are fake. And while we propose to companies to do insetting project, meaning planting the trees or developing the climate project within their supply chain or within their sphere of influence so that it's more integrated, more legitimate, and as well this is a direct benefit for themselves. And there we see that climate action is a way to develop new ways of creating positive growth and employment opportunities. And for all the students here and even the non-students, but it's never too late to start, I think that all these fields of sustainability open amazing opportunities of social entrepreneurship to create our own activity. I've never seen social entrepreneurs that have regretted to do it. And it's sometimes even more easy and much more promising for youngs to engage in social entrepreneurship than in a big, large-scale companies, especially to me, if the large-scale companies don't integrate the climate stake into their business, they will disappear. So don't choose the brands that don't do nothing. Choose the one that engage for your own benefit as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for asking the next question for me, which is how do large companies include climate into their strategy? How do they transform themselves or their value chain? I think we will ask this question. But before this, I have an announcement to make, which is that you are allowed to ask questions through the electronic platform. They will be sorted out, selected, and prioritized for the final debate. So from time to time, you will see this, and that's how to raise your questions. But let's then move to this. Thank you, Tristan, for raising the question of the large groups. More traditional businesses, strategies, and how they can transform themselves. Maybe we can start with Emmanuel Faber and Danone. We heard a little bit earlier that food is somewhere between 30 or 40% of the world emissions, the whole food chain, of course. And your group has reduced their emissions by more than 40% from 2008 to 2014, which is remarkable. But most emissions related to your business, dairy business and water business, are indirect because it's farming, it's glass, it's logistics. So and so it's much more difficult probably for you to reduce those. Does emissions reduction require different food systems? What are your views, and how will you remain a winner in the future food system of the world?
That's a pretty easy question. To just use what Bertrand said about how climate is basically linked to water, and overall, it's clear that it's linked to the food cycle, which I would rather call cycle than chain. You can't be a company that has a mission around food without looking at all these aspects of climate, whether they are water, we use probably, or the processes through which agricultural transformation we are engaged probably use 250 billion liters of water every year. A lot of plastic. It's absolutely fundamental that we think about the agricultural model that will support our development. 90% of the several 100,000 of farmers that we are working with have less than 10 cows. So yes, we do have relationship with some mega farms in the US, in a couple of countries. But if I look at the human reality, this is people that we were mentioning earlier, people that have nowhere to hide, other than by raising their standard of living, their productivity, their coming from 1.5 liters to gradually 3 and maybe one day 5 liters a cow, which is very far from the 50 that you can get in some countries. So this is absolutely at the core of what we have to do. We have used the 2 degrees scenario to design the future of our climate policy, which is completely embedded in the organization. It's not like there is CSR, because it embeds the way we work with the farmers, the way we purchase our milk, our water, the way we process it, the way we talk to our consumers, the way we deal with the big retailers and the cold chain when there is a cold chain, and this when we export it, etc., etc. This is totally operational and management, nothing to do with CSR or charity. And when we have that, we've used the 2 degrees scenario to create a scenario where both in terms of peak of emissions, zero net emissions, which includes some insetting, obviously, we will be, I think, not only at least, but probably significantly in advance of the overall COP21 objectives, which will also embark some additional zero net, which will be on water, the way we use and we we give access to water through our systems. Plastics, the same way where we will recycle plastic or use non-fossil plastic more than we actually use fossil virgin plastic. We will probably, we're thinking about putting in place a tax inside the company for water and probably actually for plastic too, and for CO2. And all of this, I think, is where probably there is, for me, the most critical aspect of all of this is to align the organization, the governance, and the incentives with this strategy. One of the reasons we were successful to reduce our carbon intensity by 40% recently is because overnight, in 2008, we decided that 1/3 of the total bonus of the top 1.5 thousand managers at Danone around the world would be about social and environmental aspects. 1/3, not 5%, not 10, a third. And I think this is not because people want to make money. This is simply because they want to listen to a leadership team that basically puts its money where its mouth is. It's a matter of consistency. And we will continue to work on this consistency because I really believe that it's a fundamental way how the leadership team can embark everyone, authorize everyone, and make sure that everyone in the company understand that this innovation that we are talking about, we really mean it. We really mean it in terms of business goals. And so that's, I think the consistency of it is essential. It's never win. It's, I mean, we've never, we'll have the feeling of being or having achieved this, but walking this path of strategy, organization, governance, and incentive, I think is critical to the success.
Thank you very much. Very impressive, and good luck on this ambitious path. Bruno Lafont, it's still more difficult with cement because cement is a chemical reaction with 700 kilos CO2 for each ton of cement. Bruno Lafont has been the chairman of EP, so I have learned a few things. And how do you see the future of cities and construction to fit with this target of zero net emissions in the long term?
If the question is what is that do for your strategy? So when we were looking at our strategy recently, we tried to find something which was much more customer-focused, market-focused, and when we were looking at the market, not only with our eyes of traditions, you know, which is how to make the biggest profit with the biggest contractor. We were looking at the new emerging countries. You know, there are two challenges in the world today. The first one is climate change, but the second one is urbanization. And when it goes together, you are in the middle of our business. Climate change because we emit, climate change because we can find good solutions for helping people to fight climate change by themselves. And cities, if you build cities in a sustainable way, you contribute to make cities more energy efficient and more things. And that is drawing all our actions. So we reduced our CO2 emissions, which is by an amount which is not, I will not take it in percent, but if we had not done anything, I think we would have emitted today 30 million more tons per year of CO2 than 15 years ago. That is CO2 emissions of a small country. So, and now we have doubled our size with Holcim, so we have an even bigger issue. So what did we do? We changed our fuels. We were burning 100% coal 25 years ago. Now we are burning only 25% coal. And 20% of our fuels are wastes. Those plastics, the old tires, a lot of things from waste from agriculture and even biomass now. So that's the first point. The second point is entering circular economy. If you want to reduce the cement footprint in the concrete, you put less cement and more other things. If you want to put less and less cement, you increase the quality of your concrete, but you can also reuse the concrete and reuse materials to make it part of concrete. So that reduce the CO2 emissions in your things. Then, about the cities, that is probably the most interesting transformation that we made. It was to try to be the most innovative company in our sector. So, and the most innovative company meaning putting first the biggest amount of resources in adequate research. And when you look at the research we made, we made a big choice, which was not to research on cement, but to research on concrete. Concrete, you know, is made of cement, stones, sand, and water. So, but the way you put all these things together makes it completely different. And the way you look at it makes it completely different. And it's very interesting because not moving anything, I know that 50% of our research goes into innovation in concrete, which are fighting climate change. And with those concrete, you will have less energy emissions, but there are many more things we do. To give you an idea, because we are now in emerging markets, and that is very much linked to poverty also. You know that 1 billion people have no decent homes today in the world. That is a huge market for us, potentially, and we are not addressing it. And I will give you 2 examples. The first one is in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. One of our team, because we decided to put 1 marketing guy in each country, said to us, let's help us to reduce or to replace the bricks by concrete. In fact, what do the farmers in sub-Saharan Africa do? They cut trees, they put the fire on the trees, and they try to produce bricks just by, taking earth and putting, and they are producing ugly bricks and deforesting at the same time. It is interesting that our research laboratory was already looking for an affordable house for India. And India is also a country where most homes on the countryside are made with earth. And so our challenge was to try to make cement gluing earth, which has never happened before. In general, you cannot mix cement with organic stuff. But we succeeded. And now what we propose to sub-Saharan Africa, we send them small bags of very special cement with a small machine. Instead of putting fire, they take the earth, they put it in the machine, they mix it with cement, they press it, and they have a block. And the block helps them to build, and now we are selling them the model of how to build their homes. So that is against deforestation, that is more sustainable because our home will not be washed out by the next cyclone, and it will be more affordable because they are saving a lot in terms of repairs for their homes. The second thing we have done was to find a way to take ready-mix concrete inside the slums. In urbanization in emerging markets, but that's also true in developed countries, is a big amount of it is slums. And the big problem is that those people cannot make their concrete in the slums. And so we find also the recipe to transport the concrete ready, high quality, in plastic bags on motorbikes for the slums. But that is an enormous organization because it requires to have the teams, to have the contractors, to have all these things ready, and also to have our equipment at the door of the slum. So there are many things we do like that. We are doing also extraordinary concrete. But what is true is that we are starting to make a lot of money with sustainable things. And while fighting climate change, if we are ahead of our competitors, I think we'll make more money than them. And sustainable development is not anymore in our company a special department, It might be a special department to go to WBCSD or to go to the UN or to lobby on this or that, but it's part of the business completely.
Thank you very much. And finally, Bertrand, the World Bank Group has taken last year a remarkable initiative in the carbon pricing campaign, where more than 70 states and 1,000 companies have required some form of carbon pricing, price on emissions, as an indispensable governance tool to reduce emissions, to maintain 2 degrees. But still, despite this very active commitment, the World Bank continues to fund coal-fired power plants. I think so? No. Great, then you have changed. Let's get the complete answer. And how do you align the World Bank strategy and actions towards development, in particular to respond developing countries' aspirations, with aligning that with the 2 degrees challenge?
Before entering into the World Bank Group strategy, let me answer your question.
Yes.
it's extraordinarily fascinating that we published, after 2 years of conversation between countries as different as the US, various EU countries, Australia, India, China, etc., a paper called Energy Strategy for the World Bank, 20 pages. We had, I think, 2 lines in these 20 pages. We say in very specific circumstances, when there is no alternative, etc., in certain countries, we could consider financing power station, using coal. 2 lines out of 20 pages. And surprise, surprise,
That's
you, like others. No, but again, it's very interesting because it's just so unfair. I mean, but again, you can laugh in this room. I mean, we have built our industrial revolution on coal. We have immensely benefited from that. Africa is creating less than 1% of the greenhouse gas, emitting less than 1% of the coal. In certain circumstances, there is no real alternative to diesel or coal. It's a reality. So why should we deprive these people of no access to energy because we, in the Western world, we think that it's not good? We have to face this. So we are not crazy people. We are leading the world in terms of financing renewable. We are one of the largest source of renewable. So I'm very happy to discuss coal, but I think it's just really, I mean, not only unfair, but totally misleading, if not malicious. And I'm very, no, but I'm sorry to be insisting on that. I mean, it's very interesting. I'm spending a lot of time, and I do like it, and I share their concern with a lot of NGOs. And it's very easy to take the high moral ground and say, hey, guys, you shouldn't displace population. Hey, take care. Don't do that, it's bad. When, I mean, we have built France, we have built the US on things which would not be accepted today. So I don't mean to repeat what we've done, but I think we need to have a more balanced view. And again, there is a sentence I like a lot from Charles Péguy. Charles Péguy said, when people want to have clean hands, at the end, they don't have any hands. When you do real business, you have to put your hands in some shit from time to time. It's difficult. You have to make choice. I'm sorry, this is the real life. So of course, I can say, okay, I don't do this, I don't do this. And at the end of the day, you will not be impacted. But the people in Africa, the people in South Asia will be impacted. So I'm sorry, I'm a little bit emotional on that because this is really something which does exist. We have to take this into account. I don't want to ignore that. But this is not the center of the conversation. I mean, it's probably less than 1% of our outstanding financing, and it's probably less than 1,000th of what we do finance today. So this is not the issue. So if I come back to
what you finance.
If I come back to the World Bank Group mission, of course it's a difficult animal. Of course it's very easy to target the IMF and the World Bank, especially in France. There is a long history, and the truth is that neither the IMF nor the World Bank have been perfect all over the year. It's a tough job. But the time of the so-called Washington Consensus, where basically these 2 institutions were dictating privatization and tough policies, it's 20 years ago. It's really over. The same NGOs actually wrote together a very strong support to the World Bank strategy last year, actually. So what are we doing today? We have this mission of eradicating poverty, not alone, of course, and sharing prosperity, meaning we want to have countries where inequality are being reduced. That's really what we are being paid for. And we have 2 attributes for that. First, World Bank. So we have money, and we are providing money. So we are not involved in industrial process, but we are working with Lafarge. Actually, we just signed a project in Iraq with Lafarge and others. So we are working with Lafarge. We are working with people. So we don't do things ourselves, but like a bank, you finance projects. So we bring money, and we also have an influence. We are standard setters de facto. I mean, what we call safeguards, related to environmental and social issues, usually they are engineered by our people. And then they become de facto a standard for the rest of the world. So it's a difficult responsibility. So we have to play with both. So, and this is really what climate is about. Climate is about money, and it's about policy. So we are active on both. And this year is very critical. I mean, 2015, I hope, will not be, as I say, a missed appointment. We had 3 big events this year. Financing for development in Addis Abeba. How do you finance development? July. Sustainable Development Goal, New York last week. And COP21 at the end of the year. And the question is always the same. We have to shift paradigm. Until a few years ago, it was just about public money, centralized approach, etc. This is over. So we have to adapt ourselves. So how do we move to joining forces with the private sector? This is extremely difficult. Let's be honest. I mean, the private sector is always suspicious of the public sector because they think they are corrupt, they are not up to their words, etc. There are tensions. And the public say, well, these private sector guys, they want the money without taking the risk. So we have to face this, and we have to work on that, because climate change it will be addressed by private ingenuity, by private creativity, by private innovation, by everything that Emmanuel, Bruno, or Tristan have described. That's critical, and we have to make sure this is happening, and we have to helm this. But there is also a lot of money at stake. I mean, it's about trillions. It's about trillions of dollars. And this money will not, I have no printing machine in my basement. You have to find the money everywhere. You have to be creative. That's really crucial. So it's about the green bonds. I mean, they've been invented by the World Bank. It's not very well known, but we've invented the green bonds. We have to be imaginative. One of the few products I'm very proud of in the Pacific Island. The Pacific Islands are hit by climate change more than many countries on Earth. Nobody cares because in total it's less than 1 million people. So why matter? But it's important. Yeah. It's important for the biodiversity. It's important for many things. So they are hit by tropical storms, by typhoon on a regular basis. So we put together with Japan, with paying for the insurance premium, an insurance against natural catastrophe in the Pacific Ocean. We engineered the whole product, and we went to the reinsurance and insurance market, the private market. And now, Tonga 2 years ago, Vanuatu in April this year were hit. We have been able to put real cash on the table with no strings attached to the government in less than 2 weeks. That's what finance can do when it's properly handled. So that's important. So we can mobilize our money. We have to mainstream climate. We have to make sure that we have to screen our projects to see the climate impact. This has an impact on ourselves. It's an impact on our partners. And that's the way you influence the world. And lastly, I finish with your first point, carbon pricing. I think this is absolutely crucial. I think we are focused a lot, to a certain extent rightly, on the so-called $100 billion that the North promised to give to the South every year by 2020. That's a real big figure. But on the one hand, it's a lot. On the other hand, it's not enough. So it's a magic figure. And we have to find a way to get there. That's I think, important. Don't want to ignore that. But the truth is that the real cost will be way bigger than that. And this will be handled by the way the market behaves. And market will behave if you have an appropriate carbon pricing, if you have the right incentive. And I'm very happy to say that last week, Microsoft, Walmart, and some others agreed to set up a pricing on carbon. That NG, the GDF Suez, agreed to have, and so on and so forth. And you. So carbon pricing for me is a way to unleash properly the market forces. And that's where we have a role, because we can advocate for that and we can put a little bit money on the table. So it's not just about 1 or 2 coal factories, which are not good, I do agree, but not that bad from time to time. So again, again, we are talking about forests. There is a tree and there is a forest behind. I urge you to look at the forest because the forest is getting greener. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think all your interventions confirm the fact that at least it is a lot of innovation in the business models, in the products, and congratulations. Before we move into questions from the room, I think you have time to say what you want to say to these HEC students and alumni. And also COP21 is coming. Do you have a comment? What do you hope for it? What do you call for in COP21? Who wants to start? You want to start, maybe, Bertrand?
Okay. Well, I thought about this yesterday when I was in a plane. So a plane is, of course, something not very good for climate, as we all know. And I'm traveling a lot, which is not good for climate and not good for my health. But I thought about this
Tristan has something
because
for you
the weather was pretty tough yesterday. And when the pilots say, we are entering an area of turbulence, please return to your seat and fasten your seatbelt, that's exactly the place where we are today. We are entering very turbulent times. Better return to your seat, better fasten your seatbelt, but don't lose your compass. So you are lucky, for those of you who are students, you will learn what's going on in the world in a difficult moment. But what is emerging is fascinating, and you will have to play a role in this emerging world. That's absolutely fascinating. That's really, I mean, the conversation we are tonight, you will build this world. So short term is difficult. I can tell you, climate was kind of very easy to discuss a year ago, back from the summer. I mean, with the turbulence on the Chinese market, tensions in emerging economy. I mean, there are competing priorities. You really want to put all your money on climate today? Well, not so sure. That's very important. So today, you have a lot of dispersion forces, centrifugal forces, which are selfish forces. And despite that, we have to maintain to be grouped. So I think it's a fascinating period for you. You will live something very different. I hope COP21 will be a strong signal that we move forward. We will very soon know whether it's a success or not. I'm convinced it's going to be a success because we have no choice. And I urge you to look at China. I mean, the position of China, we always criticize China, we don't get them, etc. But in climate, this is one of the very decisive moves they've been doing.
Thank you very much. Bruno Lafont, I will ask the three of you to be rather short because we would like to keep some time for questions before 9:15.
So, of course, there are many different messages, and I don't know who you are,
mostly students.
What could
they are
be
the ones
interesting
who
for
count
you. So, if you want to start a business, or if you want to behave well where you are living, I think there are 4 attitudes which are normal and good. First, you should observe your impact. Everyone has an impact. A company has an impact. We call it footprint. Try to see the size of your footprint. It can be small, it can be big. Feel your responsibility for this footprint. Third, you act to reduce or to improve the situation. And fourth, you measure, you verify. So those attitudes are the only one we can be producing results, and for us it's completely critical. And help you to lead also, because if you believe it is important, then you should not only do the 4 things, you should lead. The extraordinary things we had in our industrial sector, that by acting correctly and properly, the 2 leaders in the industry were able to form a coalition of 25 large cement groups, which in total reduced their emissions, introduced and created data, did everything I said, committed, acted, and measured. And that is the only one example which today exists in the world. And that was the act of 2-3 people. And we have now embarked the Chinese cement industry with us. It's difficult, but it's possible. So everything you do to produce those winning attitudes and then to lead will contribute to reduce, to fight properly climate change.
Thank you. Tristan, what is your message? You will be very active in COP21 with Visible in the Grand Palais in Solution COP21 if you want to come to Paris from Jouy.
Yes, we hope there will be an agreement, but whatever happens, we shall not wait for that agreement to start to act on a personal and, as you say, on a personal and a professional way. What has been said tonight, I think, is very interesting because both what Emmanuel and Bruno have said about their engagement, the engagement of their company, we feel that it's fully embedded into the business case. It's great. Before it was not this. There was a foundation and for like CSR activities, and now it's fully integrated into their business. So it's great, but unfortunately, there is less than 0.001% of companies like their company doing this and this shift. Very few. If we look at all the companies in the world, and let me give you an example. If we had to offset. Yeah,
I think I am going to ask you to be shorter.
Sorry?
Not go on with new examples. I think it's just a conclusion. Well,
but then I will wait for questions if there is.
Emmanuel Faber, you will hear the story. Ask the question.
We'll hear the story from Tristan. I promise. I'll keep it very short. On COP21, for me, one of the critical aspects, which is not yet discussed enough, and I'm not sure it will be the fact that I don't think we can fight climate without ensuring better justice and social justice. I think the level of inequalities, and Bertrand alluded to that several times, is such that it is a danger, and it is a danger to climate stability. I think by dealing with social justice, we will, in and by itself, solve some of the climate issues, and we will not be able to make climate policies stick if we do not address these inequalities better than what we do today. The one thing I would like simply to share with you as everyone, every person here, is that my experience has been that you cannot change your organizations, even your job, even the way you deal without changing yourself. And climate is such a complex thing that personally I've changed my mind several times. I'm sure I will continue to, but accepting to change yourself and being part of the change is for me the only way you can contribute, but probably even the most important way we can all, each of us, contribute to this huge topic that we're talking about today.
Thank you very much. Louise, you must have had a number of questions. Maybe have you made a selection or a synthesis? Let's.
There were a couple of questions that were reoccurring, but I'm going to start with the most popular one, which was, have you invested, this is a question for Danone and Lafarge, have you invested or do you plan on investing in order to produce your own energy?
I was in New York last weekend at the UN, and I followed the business discussions, and I attended some meetings which I could hear, and I went back with 2 or 3 questions for my company. And the first one was, it will go, and it will go much quicker, much faster than what I thought. Second, the coal issue is becoming burning. So even with my 25%, I have to find more solutions. And then, through a lot of discussions I had around, I discovered that we could look for even more opportunities. I was in Morocco 2 weeks ago, and I discovered, we had put windmills for producing the electricity in our cement plant in the north. And so it was fantastic, we got credits for that and so on, but it was only one plant with some wind and with some subsidies. When I went to Morocco, I understood that now 85% of our electricity is produced by renewables. So that means not only on the coast in the north, but through agreements, and so that people have found some solutions. So we have to generalize this and maybe create power plants which do not look anymore at the type of power plants we have. But I agree with the answer, very much with the answer of Benoit on coal.
Emmanuel.
The answer is not significantly. Energy is an important part of our overall climate topic, but certainly not the biggest. So we have reduced significantly the level of energy, the amount of energy that we are using per kilogram or liter of our product. We have, of course, invested in redesigning our processes that therefore use less energy, but we have not invested in producing our own energy. We've been working with partners who we believe are better placed than us, because this is not our business, to produce energy that has a limited impact on the overall climate situation. So working with partners, but not invested ourselves specifically on that topic.
I think, Louise, we will have time for one more question. So pick it well.
All right, so a lot of people were concerned about how to be a pioneer in a world that's still pretty far behind on this kind of thinking. So the question was, how do you explain to shareholders investments that have no economic return?
It's very easy. It's because we find opportunities all the time. So, we should not be sad or trist when we talk about this. There are a lot of opportunities. And when I change my fuels, I'm saving money. When I create a new product or a new solution, I'm making money. So each time we move into a direction, we know it is a transformation. We know we have to find a solution. But the example I gave on windmills, now it is just for us to accelerate and to find the solutions to accelerate.
Emmanuel, you want to?
Well, I think that there is a passing bandwidth within which there is an acceptable dialogue that can take place with shareholders. The idea of sustainable development is good, and of course you have all these goodies, indexes, and of course it's important and we participate in that and everything. But I think that one aspect that shareholders are more concerned with now, and that probably is related to this situation, more than sustainability, which is probably not a priority for mainstream investors overall, I would call it resilience. Because in the world in which we live, where things are changing so fast in many, many, many ways, climate is now part of discussions with governments for reasons that are political, not even because of climate. But for reasons that are political, the license to operate of large companies is now dependent on their climate policy in a number of occasions. And where this is related to shareholders is because it builds resilience. If we are not working on our climate policy in some important territories where we operate in emerging countries, we will be faced with social unrest, political unrest, problems with water access that have an impact on the resilience of communities and therefore has an impact also on climate. And so, because everything is related, if you call it resilience as opposed to calling it sustainability, there is overall a risk-reward equation in the mind of a shareholder that makes this dialogue much more possible. But as I just said, it's a matter of a passing bandwidth.
Bertrand, you wanted to, your shareholders are slightly different, but
I didn't want to
speak with
discuss
them.
About my shareholders, actually, which, as you say, are different. There are 188 governments with their own agenda. No, I just wanted to say two things. First of all, I do agree with Emmanuel. Shareholders understand that you have to holistic approach to value. It's not just the traditional understanding of what it means. And people understand that you cannot go in that direction without taking this holistic approach on issues. My second point, I come back to carbon pricing. We have to help shareholders. I mean, if we agree on some form of carbon pricing, whether through carbon tax or whether through real efficient carbon markets, we are not there yet, but we are moving in that direction, hopefully. That will help the equation being solved more easily. Because this is the way you create the right incentive, and that's what, in particular, the large oil companies have decided last year. They want to move in that direction. A number of large corporates are moving in that direction. This is a way to signal to shareholders, hey, this is really part of the ultimate value of the company. We are not trying to destroy something that ultimately will leave you with nothing in your hands. So that's a very strong message.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all four of you, and thank you very much to the audience for the question. Before we move to, before I invite Peter Todd to come on stage, I would like to conclude this discussion with one word, which is that I hope you have understood that the climate issue is here for you to tackle, and to tackle in mainstream economy, and not just, as Emmanuel has said, it's not CSR, it is really mainstream business. And so this putting climate into mainstream activities that you will have in your professional life or in your current business life meets the request of all the EPE members. Half of the CAC 40 is a member of EPE, to schools. And it is, please make sure that all your students have heard about the basics of climate, have heard about the basics of climate economics, and come to business with the idea that it has to be transformed to fit with the future, with the challenge of the 2 degrees that we are here today. Thank you very much. I think you can stay here. And Peter Todd, I am happy to welcome you.
Merci Claire, and let me thank the panelists for some inspiring conversation and discussion that capped off what was a major event for the school today. And I will tell you, one of the events where we've brought the most number of students and alumni together in the history of the school to listen to a topic that and to talk about an issue that certainly is among the most important social issues, environmental issues, political issues, and business issues that we face in our society. I think when we reflect on the day that we've gone through today, for those of you that have participated through the day, this problem was approached, as it should be, first of all, through the lens of science and to understand the foundations of the issue. but then I think was expanded through, as we heard tonight, with some of the wisdom of experience, and animated through our students, I think, by the energy of youth. And it's going to take all of those things coming together to be able to solve this problem. Approach the day with a scientific rigor, but I think tonight, particularly hearing too, a lot about the importance of having practical perspective on climate finance, on renewables, on consumption, on pricing, and maybe most fundamentally on the opportunity of climate for innovation at Lafarge, for innovation in Danone, for innovation among regulatory agencies, for innovation among developing economies. And that sense, I think, of entrepreneurial innovation is going to be critical to develop practical, durable solutions. And I think that idea was also at the center of our activities today. Certainly the evening has profited from having thought leaders, Jeremy Rifkin, our panelists, people who've helped us, I would hope, to open our eyes, not just to problems, but as we heard through this panel tonight, to possibilities, to encourage us to continue to search in this regard for practical solutions to complex problems and not take simple dogmatic perspectives on what the answers are to these kinds of problems. I think that what we've been encouraged to do today is to energize ourselves towards taking responsibility, and in the sense of taking that responsibility, to take action. So I'd like to thank all of you as we wrap up. I've said some thanks to the panelists. I also want to say some words of thanks to my colleagues here at HEC Paris, and particular thanks to Rodolphe Durand, to Bénédicte Fèvre-Tavignon, and to the SNO team for their organization of this event. And I'd like to ask all of you to join me in thanking them. And simply to wrap up, je pense que les macarons t'attendent. Alors, I never want to be between a big audience and their macarons. So, merci beaucoup et bonne soirée à tous.
Les macarons attendent et je vais faire une... well, sorry, in English. I'm going to make a second logistical announcement. There is a carpooling meeting point in front of the Blondeau Hall. So for everybody going back to